Miracle Piano. The keys are in your hand. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
And that was not a real back of the box because this game's box was actually the whole freaking piano. There's no separate Miracle Piano cartridge only box sold somewhere. So it was just a bunch of jargon on the back of the box, and I thought that was clever. So I'm gonna give myself a point there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a good back of the box, but you've come a long way.
And if you want more creative back of the boxes, we do that all the time on the Bites episodes because I can't read Japanese.
You could if you tried, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about learning how to play piano on the NES.
The ultimate video game experience.
This is an actual application software.
Yeah, and so, great segue, Sean. This is not playable via anything other than that giant piano with the box and everything that I was talking about a second ago. That's the only way to play this game. You do need an NES controller as well, but you need the piano to actually register that you're hitting the right keys so that the program, the application, can continue to move along and recognize that you're playing the notes correctly. So the only way to play this game, unless you're really skilled with emulation and configuring MIDI outputs and stuff like that, those MIDI, I think those are called MIDI. It's real, most NES emulators cannot do this. You definitely need the actual Miracle Piano. You can't fake it with even another keyboard. So it just takes a lot of effort. So the only way to really experience the Miracle Piano is with the actual hardware, the NES, a CRT, an NES controller. You need everything. You need to basically find someone's old game room and hope that they have all that equipment so that you can get your hands on really checking this out, because otherwise this is now what the kids would call a Twitch experience, where you just go on YouTube and you watch someone else play the game and you say, hey, that's how it's done and that's what it was like, and I'll never experience that.
I mean, but you did, though.
You did. I did what Mike said, but Mike, you did some real shit.
Yes, so, unlike the Power Pad, the Miracle Piano works pretty well when you buy them, and people have them on the reg. I was kind of surprised to find out that, when I typed it in on eBay, it's not like you're competing with the other bunch of other bidders for the one working Miracle Piano. It's just, how much you're willing to spend on it, and adjusted for inflation, these things were $500 back in the day, so to get them for $100 is kind of a steal.
Wow. Yeah. I'm also surprised that, just by the market ebbing and flowing with NES games and paraphernalia, along with the NES chronological exploration, that there wasn't a long lead up in price, culminating on yesterday,
Yeah, knowing the amount of listeners that we have, you would think that they would all be buying Miracle Pianos to properly experience this at the same time as us. And for the most part, everybody who wanted to get their hands on a Miracle Piano could have, based on what I saw in terms of listings and stuff. Now, I've never seen one at a thrift shop or anything, so people who have these things seem to know what they have. It was something you definitely had to be make an educated decision to buy. Again, $500 back in the day, so you're not getting this unless you can convince your parents that you want to learn the piano, right?
See, first of all, I want to say that I do quite regret not buying one of these and trying it myself. As I've been looking into it this week and watching some streamers and stuff, learning, I'm oh, that would have been fun to try, and maybe, I guess it was a little more accessible than I thought it would have been. But is it confirmed that you need a CRT? I know light gun games and stuff you do because of the way the light gun works, but are the inputs in some way only?
No, you would need a modded NES though, right? How else would you? I'm thinking about the inputs on the back of an NES. Maybe I just didn't look at mine, but mine's hooked up to a CRT, so I just didn't think you could hook up an NES to an HDMI.
I think they're usually. I think there used to be a coaxial, but I also thought, isn't there actually aren't there some that have the what are they called? Video, audio. What are those called? Auxiliary.
Oh, they have red and yellow.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of flat screens still have those.
Oh,
and mine
okay.
still does.
So I guess I just wasn't thinking about it logically. So you don't need the CRT per se, but you do need a red and yellow. What are those called, Sean? You must know. The
component cable. You need
component.
You
cable,
need a TV old enough to still have those.
Or a modded NES that lets you play on HDMI that stretches out the image to 16 by 9, and then everybody yells at you on the internet when you post a screenshot of it.
So, do either of you guys have any history with playing piano or keys or anything like that?
We had, at my house growing up, my next door neighbor was getting rid of a piano, and for some reason, my mom was like, yeah, we'll take it. And this piano sat in my parents' house like my whole life. None of us played piano. No one knew how to use it. It was always just sitting there. My sister tried to learn when she was little, right around the time we got it. But then like that went away fast. And then we just had a piano for like 25 years and then finally got rid of it. No one ever used it. So like I would mess around on it and I could like play a couple of like things by ear by just screwing around. But like I never actually learned any real piano.
Was it like on display or was it in like a storage room?
Yeah, it was a piece of furniture, you know? It looked nice.
Yeah, that's
it looked nice in our front room, and it was I don't remember. I don't know if my mom bought it off my neighbor or if she was just gonna throw it out and we just took it or whatever, but I know that like shortly after getting it, she was like, we gotta get rid of that thing, and then we just kept it for 25 more years.
Joe, the same thing happened to my family.
No way.
They were throwing, the people, like our next door neighbors were throwing out a, grand piano, or not a grand piano, a real
upright one.
Full-size, an upright piano.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, oh, this will be great, mostly as furniture, right? Like, but hey, if the kids want to play with it or whatever. But they decided to go a step further and move it down to the basement. Which is just not a good spot to get rid of, to put something if you ever want to get rid of it.
Right.
So we brought it down to the basement, and I remember our neighbor helped us, and the piano like slid too fast down the stairs and hit him in the head, and he was like bleeding out of his head.
God.
And I was like, this is not worth it for this piano. But, and then it was out of tune the entire time we had it.
Well,
and then
so was ours.
It's just like, no, but
we also had keys that didn't work.
Get it tuned or something, right? Like if you took the effort to bring it into your house and then it just doesn't work. It was the craziest piece of furniture we ever had. We had to like hack it with an axe to get it out because we weren't going to take it back up the stairs. So that was my regular traditional piano experience of just not playing anything. But we did have a keyboard that had all sorts of, not unlike the Miracle Piano, it had all sorts of fun effects.
Yeah.
It could teach you songs with it would highlight the keys in red of the notes you were supposed to play, and then it would play the next note. And weirdly enough, I have never touched or seen the Miracle Piano like learning system before I got my hands on this. And I learned in my own brain the same way that Miracle Piano teaches you at the beginning by just attributing numbers to keys and then just remembering like, this song goes 1 3 5 3 1, like just something like that, and like using the numbers in my head. That's how I came up with it on the keyboard, and then that's how Miracle Piano at least starts to teach you the placement of the keys by giving them numbers. And I thought that was crazy. I was like, whoa, I haven't thought about this in 10, 15 years.
Yeah, my experience was closer to that second experience you said, Mike, where we did have like a Casio keyboard that had like 99 pre-programmed songs with different MIDI effects or whatever kind of like canned synth effects in there, and it also had different layers of like tutorial where you could just play any key and it would play the song, or then it's like you could play any key. Then you could play the key, but it would wait for you to continue the song, and then it would just keep going where the song is playing with or without you, and you have to actually be good at playing the piano to keep up. So stuff like that is what I'm used to. But and so it's good to hear that this Miracle Piano actually comes with tools that let you learn.
And while we've mentioned that it's not a game, it's a teaching system, there are some mini games, but we'll get to them later, that, cross the line into video game. But this is kind of a weird thing for us to cover. We are out of our element, as we all just described our piano experiences and stuff. So this is not going to be the episode where we try to explain how to play piano or really get into depth on any of that. We're going to talk about it, as much as the game covers it. But if anybody was expecting to learn or think that we learned how to play piano for this episode, you will be disappointed.
By the end of this episode, you will be able to play piano.
You will be able to play hot cross buns.
Yeah, listen to this in your sleep for a month, and you'll be able to play piano.
Oddly, this was not labeled as part of Nintendo's education line. The thing that only had Donkey Kong Jr. math and nothing else. They just abandoned labeling those games altogether, right? Those were just the black box games that got labels. It's no longer do we hear like this is part of the action series and this is part of the Zapper series.
I mean, I think the world's a better place for it.
Yeah, you can't categorize your life like that.
Exactly. That leads to mental asphyxiation.
And even though we're not going to teach you how to play piano, my understanding, by all accounts of, people who have had this thing for many years and people who have played it on YouTube to show how it works and stuff like that, and probably the most famous example of the Miracle Piano is the speedrunner, the Mexican runner who completed every NES game ever, actually completed and pretty much learned the piano in order to do so, completed all the lessons in Miracle Piano as part of his, objective to beat every NES game. This isn't Guitar Hero. This isn't, making, fun ways to, see the notes and then hit the right keys at the right time and just learn gimmicks. This is an actual teaching system that wasn't just on the NES. The Miracle Piano was a whole line of things for computers, for other consoles, and the way it works under the hood is actually pretty cool. So I think, it's just different than we've ever talked about before because I don't know if you guys were even thinking Guitar Hero or rhythm game equivalent, but I'd argue that, like I've always argued, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is more of a rhythm game than this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I first watched any content from this game, all thoughts of Guitar Hero were pretty quickly out of my head because, I watched, the main thing I watched a couple of different things, but the main thing I watched was the Mexican Runner's stream, and it is actually pretty remarkable to see him start, and, doesn't seem like he has any knowledge of playing piano, and at the end, he's not he's not going to be, at some, grand piano recital or anything, but the guy, it sounds like he's playing the piano. It actually kind of blows my mind. So when you watch through each little thing, they are little, I would equate them to online lessons or something. It feels like that. I'm curious how you felt actually with the software, Mike, but if you felt like you were learning anything.
Yeah, because the video game component of this, or the lessons, it's not just watching videos. I feel like some of these Casio keyboards that you would have came with an instructional DVD that you would have had to follow along. But the fact that now you have an input that not only tells you whether you press the right or wrong key, but also the difference in timing. So, if you play a little bit off there's a metronome that just constantly keeps ticking. Play a little bit off that also doesn't count. So it's not just waiting for you to hit the right notes. You have to be in time. That kind of direct feedback is what makes this probably more impressive than other ways to learn the piano. That's got to be the sell, right? Is that there's this interactive component.
Yeah, and sort of to bring it to a modern equivalent, this reminds me a lot of Rocksmith, which while it didn't give you, this is something that I had on the PS3 back in the day. It was a fun little oddity that I was sort of my last gasp to try and continue to learn guitar. But it was the disc, and then it was a USB to 1/4-inch jack, and you would just plug your actual electric guitar into it, and I don't know if it was spectrum analyzing or something, but it could tell what string you were playing, what fret you were at, probably just by telling the actual note you were playing. And it would have a Guitar Hero-esque fret, but it was an actual this is the actual music you're supposed to be playing, not this rhythm game input button. So it also had a lot of like teaching mechanisms, not so much game stuff. So that's like that's what it sounds like to me, at least for piano.
And you're saying any guitar would have worked? You didn't have to buy like Rocksmith's guitar?
No, any electric guitar.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's what I feel like was missing here, was either one of the other things should have happened. Either, the Miracle Piano should have been the software, and you could have plugged in via the power of a MIDI to NES controller, like plug in any keyboard of your choosing, or it could have had the NES controller like built into it, and then you could have a lot of fun playing other, like, trying to beat Mega Man on your Miracle Piano.
Yeah, I guess what from what you're describing and what I've seen in videos from the game, or videos of people playing the game, is that there's a lot more information coming to and from the keyboard. Like, the audio of the game itself comes from the keyboard. Like, nothing comes from the TV, right?
Right, the metronome comes from the TV, so that it's an interesting distinction.
That's
to like
cool.
just pop that out. But yes, the metronome comes from the TV, and everything else comes out of the keyboard. So it's not just the keys that you're pressing; it's actually like menu music also comes out of the speakers on your keyboard. So it's like I'm not sure why they make that distinguish, but yeah, it is nice to have the metronome not be like interrupted as you're playing keyboard sounds, because you're using that to keep time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of calls back to, you wouldn't have the metronome right in your ear. It would be somewhere in the room, but not right there, right? I don't know.
Well, no, but on that Casio keyboard, or I don't know what I had. I don't think I had a Casio, but like on that keyboard you were talking about, and the one that I had that lit up the red lights to show which keys to press, that one, the metronome was also on the speakers, so you would run into that problem.
Yeah, that's more so out of necessity, because Casio or whoever isn't just going to make another plug-in of like, okay, and then the clicks will come out over here. I guess like with this game, they could have a second output, so it would make sense to put that somewhere else.
I do like the idea, though, that like your whole giant blocky CRT TV in 1990 was just functioning basically as the metronome. like I guess there's also text on the screen, or like stuff you're seeing on the screen, but audibly the metronome.
And the piano itself is pretty bulky. It's definitely not the piano that I brought down to my basement and that my neighbor hit his head into, but it's just a bulky full-size keyboard. It's not a mid-size, or like, just one set of keys that then you have to like toggle to get to the next octave. This will do it all. So it does require a separate power source that you have to plug both into the piano and to an outlet, and then you also have to plug the piano into the second controller port on the NES, because the first controller port is your NES controller that you use to cycle through the menus and decide to take on the next lesson. There are 6 different effects for the piano, and you can even toggle the effects to split them on the keyboard. So like half is like synthesizer and half is organ. Thought that was pretty cool. But you could also just have the whole thing be a synthesizer and the whole thing be an organ, or the whole thing just be electric piano. And then there's the select button on the keyboard, which if you use that in combination with the volume key, you can get different piano sounds like new age, rock, jazz. That was less cool than the turning your keyboard into a synthesizer, but still impressive options. And I didn't have this, but apparently there's an overlay that you can put over all these buttons and lights to explain like how to access those other things, but you can just look it up online, so it's not necessary. There was a foot pedal, but that's the crazy expensive thing. And when I say foot pedal, I'm being generous. So I didn't have it, but I saw it online. Yeah, it's a little button that you push down for the pedal effect. Like you could almost you could hold it in your hand instead. If you want to play like one-handed keyboard and then just push this button, or have somebody else push the button, honestly. Like it's weird that it's actually just a clicker.
Yeah, I feel like from what I've seen, the fragile construction and just how little of, like, if you're going to be wearing shoes and you're going to use this thing, you probably are going to like press the button down without even realizing it. You might crush it. I'm pretty sure a lot of these just didn't survive the first user.
Yeah, and I think that's got to be, or it's just so small that it went missing, or
that too.
Who can say? But that is the as one of our Patreon members said, that is like the holy grail of this thing. That like that's what brings this thing back to its $500 price tag, is if you had the foot pedal.
What prices for the foot pedal did you see?
Well, the thing is, like, when you see complete, right, with like a nice box and the piano and the foot pedal and the controller and everything, cartridge, that is like, some people are, buy it now, $1,500. That doesn't mean they're gonna get it. That doesn't, they're just putting buy it nows at those prices.
Yeah.
I didn't see one go for auction. I don't know if I would have even toyed with it because, spoiler alert, I didn't learn the piano here. I never got to the foot pedal lessons, so it's not like it matters. But like,
so there are actual lessons.
Oh, it's required.
That, like, you need
the
foot pedal for. Oh, okay. Well then, that sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. But again, we're just. It's like Duolingo, right? When you join it, you don't think about beating Duolingo, right? Like, you don't think about like, oh, I can't wait to get to that very end of the scroll and learn the most complicated words in that language. Like, most people just stop after like the 4th series of lessons.
Right, but I guess I'm curious. Like, if you're trying to be like a completionist and beat the game, then that sucks because you can't. But can you just like skip the foot pedal lesson, or is it like, okay, from now on, in order to pass these lessons, you're going to need to be using the foot pedals, or in order to like not pass these lessons, but even get anything out of these lessons?
Right. You need the foot pedal to achieve the effects. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. But so I'm assuming it'll like say nope, wrong, like you failed or whatever if you're not using the foot pedal, and you're not going to get anything out of the lesson.
Yeah, the nicest it might be to you is just like, say that you messed up a little bit, like, because it's not just pass or fail. It does tell you like if you played it perfectly or if you played it really poorly, but it also tells you like, not bad. Like, so there's a spectrum of things.
Mm-hmm.
So at best you would get like a not bad for not using the foot pedal, but on the later songs that it's teaching you and the later techniques it's teaching you, pretty much required.
Right. And so another question, it's because it's not this like not really supposed to be a gaming experience, can you just choose any lesson, or do you have to go like progressively? Like, do you have to unlock each lesson? Yeah,
so when you start the game, you actually get to choose not only what section of lessons you want to join from, I think 1 to 36. You also choose whether you're a child or an adult, and that changes, like, I guess, what they think you know about the piano. I chose child, thinking that that's the beginning lessons. So the way it teaches you on the screen is that it shows the keyboard, and then it puts a bunch of numbers on the keys. So rather than saying E flat, it just gives you, this is number 2, and the key next to it is number 3. And there's a bunch of numbers on screen, like a floating above the keyboard, that you have to press in order that represent those. So first it starts it off, just press the 1, which is your thumb in this case, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it waits for you to like push those buttons, and it's just neat to see that it's recognizing your keyboard with the NES. But that's like that is just the first thing that it tells you. Then it says like, all right, well, now do it, in time. And then you do it with the metronome. Then it's like, all right, well, now we're going to speed that up. And you keep, you just keep slowly learning information. I used Duolingo as like a reference earlier, but this thing, honestly, it teaches you way more efficiently than Duolingo does. I would think it's strange for language lesson learning when they're like, the first thing you need to know is like this particular animal and how to say like mother. And it's like, I'm just trying to go abroad and understand like just the general phrases that I need to know. And you think I need to understand how to say owl in French? I'm never going to say that to anybody.
I don't know. I can't really respect this game if you're going through your scales and get to like actual music that quickly, because from what I've been told, music lessons and piano lessons especially have to be scales for like at least the first year.
Yeah, you're playing a song by like lesson 4, I think. I think they give you Ode to Joy as your first song.
Oh, the drink milk song, yeah.
What's the drink? Is that what you call it?
Drink milk, love life.
I want to get flagged.
Yeah.
We might get demonetized.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't know. I don't know that. I don't know that reference.
Wow. Okay.
The drink milk
Western
song?
New York
Milk.
stuff, crazy.
West.
No, not Western New York stuff.
Everybody knows it except for you.
Well, to get back to the teaching, it's not. It also teaches you which fingers to use for each key, so you're not just doing the hunting and pecking with your index fingers like some people do for keyboards, mechanical keyboards like that you type on a computer. And then, it evolves from there. So like we were saying, you start to learn songs and stuff like that, but you also have to learn chords, So imagine the system starting with the numbers, then it flips the number system into the letter system. So you learn that, hey, that key that was number 2 is now, that's actually E flat, And then it starts showing you sheet music with the numbers next to the notes. So oh, hey, that number was that key, which is now what that note looks like on a sheet. And then, you could see where it goes from there. It literally starts teaching you the nuances of playing the piano and reading sheet music. There are eventually, not lessons I got to, but there would be different time signatures. There would be the understanding the difference between a quarter note and an eighth note, rest notes, right? Like actually counting your own rhythm instead of the metronome. Like it's pretty damn advanced, but to Sean's point, I felt like it got there pretty fast too. You were saying like you need to know scales for a while. Like I felt like I needed a lot more before I was thrown into it.
Yeah, I wish I could remember how to play, how to read sheet music, and it sounds like you got to this point where it was somewhat legible pretty quickly. So do you think like maybe you can't read it, but like do you have like an idea of it right now?
Sure, but I would say that I did band for like probably at least 8 years in school, elementary school through high school. So I actually played trombone, so it was a different, instead of the like forget what it's called, but whatever that clef is that starts the sheet, mine's
the bass.
Yeah,
clef.
so mine was the bass clef. So, or I don't even know if clef is the right word. So this is how bad I am with music. But basically, my notes didn't translate exactly. So what was A for me wasn't A for the piano. So it actually took a little bit of like rewiring and maybe confused me a little more. So I just literally started remembering the numbers more than anything, which is probably not the way that they want you to know the piano, and probably why I didn't progress that fast. But I already had an idea of like how sheet music worked. It doesn't quite get into the nuances of that in the game.
Well, speaking of like band lessons and stuff, I mean, I wonder if this is a tool best used as like homework for your actual in-person music lessons. Like I feel like that's, as someone who didn't play it and also doesn't play the piano, but like it feels like that would be the best combination, is like you're going to your lessons and this is how you practice, so it's like you're getting some of that in-person stuff that's like maybe taking that time in between your first scale and suddenly Ode to Joy.
Yeah, I'd say that this is less the situation that Mike described of like you're a kid and you're like, Mom, I want to learn how to play piano. Spend $500 on me. This is more the mom saying, you will learn to play the piano, and I know you hate going to your lessons, but we're going to make the NES another version of your piano lessons. So here it is.
Yeah. We're going to take the thing you love and make you do the thing you don't want to do.
And just to be clear, like, there are many songs that you learn, but the Ode to Joy that they throw you into on like the fourth lesson or whatever, you're only playing the melody. They haven't taught you the chords yet or how to even play with two hands. So it's not like, I didn't want to make it seem like all of a sudden they were like, great, now play this full song.
Yeah.
This is like, play that one thing from the Linkin Park song in like fourth grade that everybody tried to do.
Yeah. You might work your way up to like the Rugrats theme or something.
And then for the mini games, there's 3 mini games, and they are thrown into the lessons as well. But the first one, it kind of reminded me of Gyromite, just maybe like graphically, but you're this like Rob style robot that is moving to the beat, and then there are the note is presented above his head at a certain point, and you have to hit the key at the right time. And you are playing this like to a song, which is kind of nice, right? But you're hitting those keys at the right time to create a bridge for the robot to continue to walk through. If you miss, the robot will fall and then you'll lose. So that kind of like gamifying, it's like I'm not quite sure. That should have just been like its own thing entirely, not like part of the lessons. Because I get like, in a way, you're having fun and learning, right? But that just feels like it's all three of these games that we're going to get into. Just feel like they should just be their own thing.
Oh wow! I only saw some footage of the first one. Please describe the second.
So
and third.
there's a duck hunt one as well, where you have the ducks populate, and then they have the they have like the key that you need to press above them, and then you click that key and it shoots them. So again, just to get with it, that's not different than the robot game, right? Like they just gave you a different graphic way of understanding. It's like different sheet music.
Well, wait, isn't it kind of different?
Well, one's
isn't
timing.
that sort of different? Because the other one is kind of rhythm based, and this is specific keys.
No, you have to.
This is like it looks like
the robot one. You still have to hit the right key though. It's not just hitting any key to the time. You have to hit the correct key.
I see. I still think now what you've got like 4 or 5 inputs, maybe this is just like a slightly higher difficulty.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, more difficult, right?
Yeah, because the duck hunt thing looks a lot more like a bar of music. So I feel like maybe it's like getting you a step closer to like associating it with the reading music,
Yeah, I guess. I think Sean's more right that like each one of these games is just like increasing the skill level. So like Roboman was playing like one note at a time. The Duck Hunt game is more like, managing all the, the ducks on screen. And then the final one with the paratroopers is about pressing the correct combination of keys to make the chord to land the paratroopers onto the target. So it is now, kind of teaching you, but again, it's really just the same game with like, it's almost like the Sesame Street style of, remember how like it presented itself as like an option menu with 7 different games, but really it's just like, now, instead of letters, it's words. And now, instead of words, it's matching words. Like, it was just taking, like, one extra step. This one, at least, was nice enough to change the game, at least. So it's not like it's just the robot building bridges, but this time you press chords instead. So I give them kudos for that. But it just felt like it was against the learning.
I still gotta say, though, I do think that the duck one... I mean, looking at it, it's the ducks are on the bar in the act where the notes are. Like I think that's.
Do you have to do it in order, Mike?
Step.
That would make sense.
Yeah, no, of course you have to. Yeah, you have to do it in order.
Oh, okay, from left to right. Then you're playing a melody or you're playing a bar.
And then also like with the robot one, it's just like it's just like totally. It looks to me totally isolated from anything that's like music related visually. The duck one, like, it's a bar of music where the ducks are on the bar, like, oh, this is a B plus or a B flat, because it's like where it's on the B line or whatever. This is an F note because it's on the F.
This note has a AAA rating.
Yeah, it's a B plus. It's a A minus.
No, I like that. I give that explanation an A plus.
An A flat.
It fell flat.
Wow. I'm right.
The Miracle system, right? Like not even just the NES version, but just all versions of the Miracle system. Apparently, it was a commercial flop because they wanted anywhere from $300 to $419, which is the equivalent of $500 to $800 today, depending on which console you bought it for, computer you bought it for. I think they were asking way too much, right? That's why I was saying, like, I'm kind of surprised they didn't just, like, shrink this down to, like, half a keyboard to get this thing rolling, because that's a large, like, the NES, I don't even think was that expensive. $299? Wasn't it, like, $200 and you also got a Zapper and Duck Hunt? Like, that's crazy. That, like, you'd have to convince people to...
Can you use it unplugged from the NES? Like, is it a working keyboard outside of the game?
That's the one thing I wish I would have tried that. I'm sure it would work, right? Because it has its own power source.
I would imagine
and the sound is coming out
that
of that.
Makes sense. Yeah. That would make sense to me to be expensive if you're also getting a functional standalone keyboard.
Right, that's something I didn't consider, but I guess sorry for cutting you off there, Joe, but I guess what I'm getting at is for this thing to work as a commercial success, you kind of just wish that they produced a cheaper accessory, right? Like, people were used to paying the console should have been the most expensive thing, so you kind of have to at least come in under the console price, right?
Yeah, it would be nice if there was like a cheap. I'm thinking of like a piano that you would get like a toddler version that comes with the NES, that comes with the game, or the option to buy like the advanced actual keyboard for $500 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, and also like even in modern parallels, like you can build a computer for $800 and then buy a $1,200 VR headset or something like that. I mean, it's not it's not completely out of the ordinary.
And that's true, Sean. And also though, VR headsets, while not being like, gigantic profitable enterprises, aren't commercial failures either, right? Like the Valve Index, by all things that I've read, isn't like Valve is now struggling to make a profit off of it.
No, I mean, I think their business model makes it so that they're somewhat profitable. They sell out. Right.
So I guess I think like Miracle Piano shot, they dreamed too big for starting off, and it's why we didn't see a lot of this with other instruments or even just like other crafts. Like I feel like it is cool that the video game, especially back then, it was probably even cooler that the video game is the teacher and is able to actually explain to you like what you did right or wrong. Like that was maybe the one thing I should have talked more about, is that it is cool that timing matters, not just pass fail, and that's something you can't get off of a instructional YouTube video. Like there's no feedback there between you and the person you're watching. You're definitely going to get that on a DVD back in the day. But even the keyboard I had, it was just like it was either the keys, the glowing red keys kept moving along to the next set of keys that you had to press, or you could set it so this way it would wait and the song would just stop completely until you pressed those keys. And neither one of those is really teaching you anything either. This is the first one that I feel like it's actually saying like, you're getting it. Like try that again.
So it'll give you like a
the
statistical
feedback makes a huge difference.
No, I wish it would have actually said like you hit 80% of the notes. Like I do think it should have incorporated some of that stuff. And it does kind of only give you a pass-fail reading while it's actually playing the song that you're playing back to it.
Okay.
It only gives you that, but the actual, when it goes to the green chalkboard screen, like that is customized to based on how you played.
Got it.
I mean, plus just the fact that there's literal like instant feedback while you're playing, even if it's not feedback like it telling you what you're doing right or wrong. I mean, you can see on the screen what you're supposed to be doing, and you can hear that you're doing it wrong. You can hear that you missed this note in real time. You can hear that you're not in time. A sheet of music, you can't do that unless you have a metronome or someone else is there telling you, hey, that was out of time, or you missed that or whatever. Like this is a lot more precise in that way.
Right. So I want to know like where's my NES cross stitching game, where where's my NES basketball game where it teaches me how to shoot my shot better, because that's one thing I cannot do with a basketball. I always shoot like left. I don't know how that's possible, but if I line myself up just a little right to the net, I know I'll have a better shot. I won't make it in every time, but I'll have a better shot because for whatever reason my hand just throws the ball to the left. These are things that like after seeing the Miracle Piano, I just wonder like what other crafts, not even musical instruments, what other crafts could they have included to teach you using the power of video games?
I really don't know what's even possible aside from music. I think music is input, output, like digital enough that it can
Hey, the Game Boy had that sewing machine.
Okay, yeah. You got me.
But you're right. No, it's true. Even like, the Wii had an opportunity, right, to maybe get people's golf better, but it didn't, right? Instead, it just treated the Wiimote as something you swing, but it could have taught you like how you're swinging, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I think could translate well is just typing.
Oh.
Just get a keyboard. Like, see, it's always got to be some sort of keyboard, but learn how to type. Learn how to type.
We should make it like horror zombie themed.
Well, that's what I kind of thought that, when I was explaining the Duck Hunt game on this, I thought that that's what it sounded like was, because you're shooting the ducks, it sounded like Typing of the Dead, but it's not. And also, Mario Teaches Typing is a game that never came to the NES, but, Joe, it should have, right? They could have done it.
I'm I'm ahead of my time, except I'm actually behind my time.
You're smarter than the people from yesterday.
But it's true. Some of them.
Around 1995, the technology from the Miracle system was incorporated into what was called the Piano Discovery System, which did not get like console ports or anything. It's not like, oh, this one's on the N64. It's this was just PC only, but it worked with any MIDI keyboard, including the Miracle piano systems. So they did get the memo eventually that, you know, like Rocksmith, you can't force people to buy a keyboard, but you can force them to use your software. And that's also like the time where like software was king anyway, right? Like Internet Explorer domination and all that. So by 1997, the Miracle product had been discontinued and the Piano Discovery System took its place completely. And to be honest, I didn't look up if like that Piano Discovery System even made it out of that year or not. Maybe it's a big thing, maybe it's dead.
Who's to know?
Well, what do you think of video games as education tools? Is that like not even the same thing? Like are leapfrog systems and stuff like that? Are those not video games? Is this not a video game?
No, I mean, I think that video games as education tools can be video games. I don't think I would consider this a video game. I mean, maybe technically, in some definition, it is, but
the three
like
mini games, yeah.
Yeah, sure. But overall, like, this is, you know, obviously moving towards that category we've had for other things where it's like, okay, this wasn't trying to do the same kind of thing most of the games we have are trying to do. But, like, I think that there's a lot of potential, even back in 80s and 90s, of having, like, these educational games work and do well and, like, be like, wow, this thing actually helped me learn piano. I think the thing that something like this has going against it is that the Venn diagram of like everything that needs to happen has too many things in the center of like, you need to have a kid who, or, you know, we'll say it's a kid. I mean, it's probably more likely children in the 90s playing on the NES, who has an NES, plays video games, is going to learn piano, and has a parent that is willing to spend the money on a piano, on a keyboard that connects to the NES, and an adult in the 90s who trusts the NES to be like a good tool for teaching something useful. And I just feel like all that stuff, like, probably a pretty rare consumer that fits all of those bullets.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Mike, it is not a video game. Those mini games notwithstanding, it's just a piece of software that happens to have a video game system as its platform. I guess, you know, with the story of the naming convention of the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, kind of like alludes to this, that there would be more like this. Maybe we will see more. Maybe there will be a budgeting software that we have to review. But
I thought that was Ghostbusters.
Very much. No, that was more an allegory for late stage capitalism, you know.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
not
right.
so much an actual budgeting software. But it reminds me of like nowadays you'll see on Steam, like literally you need a budget is something you can buy on Steam, or like 3D rendering software will be there. Like it's obviously a video game marketplace, but the software kind of creeps in. It's sort of like that.
I think, Sean, when you were saying that just because it's on a video game system doesn't make it a video game, you made me think of old memories here. Game Boy Advance Video, which was Game Boy Advance cartridges that contained, like, you know, the Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, and it had like 4 episodes on it, and you could watch them, and it was incredibly condensed. Like, I know they did it for movies too. I have no idea how they crunch these things down to play on what are equivalent of like 32 megabyte cartridges.
They had movies on Game Boy Advance?
That's how I watched Heat.
like
That's how
live
I watched
action
Heat
movies?
is a great line. They had Shark Tale, Shrek, and Shrek 2. Yeah,
That
I
is
can't
wild.
wait to see Shrek.
I remember the Video Now.
Yeah, the Video Now was a big thing, but this is actually the Game Boy Advance Video
That's
Now.
wild.
No, they didn't have the Now in there. But those, if we were doing a chronological exploration of the Game Boy Advance, I don't even know if I'd include those. Like, that's like Game Boy Advance videos separately is like branding it as a different thing, right? Like, there's Game Boy Advance games, and then this is Game Boy Advance video. The NES, they didn't quite go there with this. They still, they weren't thinking about those kinds of nuances in terms of branding.
The reason that I think that I would include this in our podcast, but not Game Boy Advance video, is that Game Boy Advance video has no user interaction.
Yes.
Like, that's what I think sets it apart. I think anything that you are interacting with, other than like selecting something on a menu, should be, is great to be included in this. But yeah, if they were just suddenly like, oh, they released a movie on the NES, I think maybe we'd talk about it. It'd be fun to talk about, but I don't think that would be an episode that we would go to the essential games list with or something.
All right, so all this in mind about whether or not Miracle Piano is a video game, we'll take into account when we vote for it on the essential games list. Sean might have already said this, but if we're just judging this on the mini games, which is the video game portion of the game, then no, it's not an essential game in my book. I didn't think that I thought they were graphically fun, interesting ways to learn music, but defeated the whole like point about introducing sheet music and learning the nuances of that. So if we're judging it based off of that, then no. But if we're judging this based on its merits of teaching you the piano, which I don't think is EGL criteria. I never asked if Mega Man 2 taught me how to, shoot an arm cannon. So I'm not going to judge whether I learned the piano or not here. I would say that this is a pretty neat way to learn an instrument. But it's not a video game, at least not in the traditional sense of what a video game is. And therefore, not something I would recommend that you play in the present day when there probably are better ways to learn the piano. With, maybe ChatGPT. Maybe AI can eventually teach us how to use the pianos, and that'll be better. The Miracle Piano is a very old, expensive, and, I don't want to say outdated, because nothing's changed about how we learn how to play piano, but it's not complete. Sean?
I would say that, this is a piece of software that I think on the essential games list, the game itself should be the rubric. Whatever it's trying to do, it should be eligible. So if this was the best way to learn a piano, then and it was the the best version of that experience on the NES, I'd say, you could put it on the essential games list if you really wanted to, but I didn't play the game. I'm just here sort of as an active audience member. So I would vote not applicable.
All right. And Joe?
Yeah, I have voted not applicable for some of those Sesame Street 1, 2, 3 ABC games. I think another one too. I'm not sure that I'm on the same page though as the game should be its own rubric for this, because the only reason is because I still consider the essential games list as something for gamers to look at and say, I love video games, what's on the NES I should still play? I don't think this scratches any sort of itch for someone who's just a gamer. I think that maybe, again, I also didn't play it, maybe this scratches the itch of someone who wants to learn piano. Maybe it's a really fun, interesting way to learn piano. And if I were voting that way, I also don't know how I would vote it on or off, because I didn't. I didn't use it at all, and I certainly didn't use it for the amount of time it would take me to actually learn enough from it to be able to review it in that way. But so as it stands, I'm going to vote no, because of it. For me, it is not applicable in that sense. And if I were voting on how good of a piano teaching teacher this is, TBD, maybe one day.
I can see you getting into it, Joe.
I feel like I would actually really enjoy it.
All right, well, next week it was supposed to be Rescue Mission, but we already released that episode because I wasn't feeling well. So next week is now River City Ransom, which is weird to say because in the future I'm probably going to rearrange these so they actually are in the correct chronological order. So, just check out what episode you're listening to. Most likely, next week will be River City Ransom for most of you, but if you're joining us late, it'll be Rescue Mission, Rescue the Embassy Mission. What was that game called?
The embassy
Thank
mission.
goodness.
Rescue the
Well, it was called
embassy mission.
Hostages, right? Like first, so that was confusing.
Yeah, let's
There
just
were a lot
do
of
the whole
names.
thing
Yeah.
all over again.
And then our Nostalgia Bite episode coming up, because we've been talking so much about the Patreon and everything. That episode is Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker. We're jumping right to the second one because the first one is actually an NES game we will play. So that's a little confusing. We're going to play the sequel before we play the real NES game. But that's why we do weird stuff like that on the Bites things. This way we don't confuse the main listeners. If you want to join us, that's patreon.com/nostalgia. It's $1 just to get access to the Discord and all the other fun stuff and support a great website, nostalgicast.com. But for $5, you get everything else. You get the bites. You get the bragging rights to the other Discord members to be like, hey, I heard the Bites episode. You're on the Discord and you didn't get to hear it, which is weird and would be toxic, so don't do that. But, do what you got to do because Mountain Dew.